I would love to hear your story, just kind of more generally, but then also how you got into fashion and whatever you'd like to highlight along the way.
Yeah, sure. Firstly, I love the Rent Collective. I think for me, coming out of college and getting into this faith and work movement is also because of organization like the Rent Collective, where you really show church can be something that is outside of Sunday. It can be Monday to Saturday, and it should be,
Mm,
right? So
mm,
for me, Liberty Society is my fashion social enterprise that we empower refugee. Coming out of college,
mhm.
I didn't graduate college. I think God sort of led me back home to Indonesia, even though my heart has always been being missions to other countries. I
Mm.
remember in Biola, I registered to volunteer at Cambodia, at India, and all these time, my dad always told me, "Why are you going to all these different places? Just come back
Yeah.
home. There's poor people." And it never get into my head. But then the moment I came back home and I see the reality of my own country, it made sense. All right, my education was overseas in the US, but then okay, God is calling me home to serve my people. It's interesting because the heart is always and is still there for me to serve people of other nations. What God does, which is really amazing, is now in this 21st century, there's about so many millions of people displaced worldwide. And when
Mm.
his calling says, uh, go and preach to the nations, Judea, Samaria, Jerusalem, and the world, he is bringing these people into your country.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
my encounter with refugees in the first place was when I started volunteering. I truly believe when you're just faithful where the Lord has opened the doors for you, that's a step towards what you feel is going to be the place where Frederick Buechner says this really well, the place where the world needs it, and also your own highest gladness.
That's right.
And
Yes. I just used that quote in my calling class this past week, believe it or not.
I love
Yeah.
that. I love that quote.
Yeah. Buchner is great.
Start hearing this refugee's story. She was a doctor before in Sudan, and then she became a Christian convert. If she remained
Mm,
in her own country, she would be persecuted. She would enter prison. And then she chose to flee here, having nothing, literally just nothing. She's a refugee, seeking
mm.
for refuge, right? When I met her, I asked her just one thing. Hey, like, how would you go ahead and face the next day when you don't even have security over food the next day?
Mm.
And then she literally just told me this, Tom, I just pray and I know that God will provide for me. I, in my entire education and Christian school life, I think seeing real cases of people who live out their faith like that,
Mm.
it inspires me.
Yeah.
So the way that now I make sense of it, I've been here for 2 years now doing this ministry slash business, is when these people come into Indonesia, yes, they may have lost a lot of material things, but one thing that they do gain is their religious freedom
Mm.
because they're able to get to know Jesus more, get to know about what they're interested, the Christian faith, without
Hmm.
fear of persecution and death in their own country. So that's
Yeah.
where the Lord is using me in these areas, pockets of evangelism, where He
Hmm.
uses business for me to share about the gospel.
That is amazing, Tam. And what strikes me immediately is you have this amazing ability. I mean, I can hear the tone of a businesswoman, but at the same time, you've got this amazing like background in thoughtful Christian, worldview. I mean, you might attribute that some of that I would imagine to your undergrad studies, at Biola. But there's also this just inherent like hunger in you. It seems like that you want to be good, you want to do well in both, right? I
Yeah.
mean, just it's fascinating. You don't see that very often. And then on top of that, as far as I can see on your you said Liberty Society, you're on Instagram. I know you blog. I think you call yourself kind of like a would-be theologian. Like it's amazing to me that you have all these, you bring these worlds together, the worlds that we talk about as like
Mm.
goodness, truth, and beauty. A lot of times, if you're an artist, you just do art. If you're a thought leader, you just write and speak. But
Mm.
I love that there are a few folks who are trying to, be hybridic, and trying to bring these
Mm.
together. So, like, I don't know what drives that in you, if I can
That's a
ask.
great question. That's a great question. My only prayer, Richard, I guess I would not separate the two. I would always say, whether it be business or whether it be my speaking or my writing, the base is my prayer that Lord make me a witness.
Mm.
I remember one mission conference it talked about being a witness to the nations. So my prayer is just, Lord, make me a witness. And for me to be faithful in what the Lord shows me is for me to write
Mm.
and then share about it when I do get the platform too. But even at
Mhm.
my business, what I'm seeing through it, Richard, I'm not the best business person because that's not really
Mhm.
my field of study. But again and again, I do see the ways that the Lord shows his miracle and his affirmative love to the four group of people: the poor, the widow, the refugees, and the orphans.
Mm.
When it's like the story of Nehemiah, when God told to
Mm.
rebuild the wall, Nehemiah doesn't necessarily have all the tools, but God sends the people to help him.
Mhm.
My part and my gifting is to bring these people together. It may be
Mhm.
different from yours. It's different than a lot of people that are listening to this now. But how do we capitalize on that talent that God has gifted and just multiply it?
I kid you not, just before we jumped on this podcast or this interview, I was listening to a podcast. Karen Newhoff was interviewing Adam Grant, who you also quote in one of your blogs.
Mm.
And he asked, he was quoting him and talking to also John Maxwell. Anyways, he said, what does Maxwell say? He says, the teamwork makes the dream work. And no matter how great you are on your own, if you have a great vision but don't have a team, you're
Yeah,
nothing. And
right.
so yeah, you really have capitalized on that in a great way. And I need to learn from you because I actually have a really good team too, but there is one component we're missing, and maybe we can talk